Hello, am I audible to all of you? Can you all hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So this chapter of the economic survey, which I have discussed here, it will help you in understanding that how India is transitioning from food security to nutritional security. Now, second is manufacturing sector.
Sir, recording चालू करो.
Manufacturing sector that we can come to know. Yes, Sagar?
Recording चालू करो.
Recording is not needed because it is streamlined on YouTube, so I'm not recording it. Sagar, you will get the link of YouTube channel and where you can get these recordings. Chalo. Now next is industry. Ab dekhiye, as we all know, when we are studying the basics of economy, we have seen that there are three important sectors of the economy. One is called primary sector, which includes the agriculture and the other like fishing and etc. And second is called manufacturing. Second sector, that is secondary sector, is manufacturing. So as we all know, one of the important problem of the Indian economy that इंडिया का जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर का जितना ग्रोथ होना चाहिए था उतना ग्रोथ नहीं हुआ है इन लास्ट फ्यू डिकेड्स, लाइक यू नो, इवन आफ्टर द इकोनॉमिक लिबरलाइजेशन ऑफ 1991. One of the important problem and one of the important structural problem of the Indian economy that in services sector has increased, the contribution of the GDP in the GDP of the services sector has increased, and the contribution of the agriculture in the GDP has decreased tremendously. But the manufacturing sector has remained stagnant. तो जितना मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर में ग्रोथ होना चाहिए था उतना मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर में इंडिया की इकोनॉमी में ग्रोथ नहीं हुआ है. So and that is what is explained here. So the second important, the thing which you need to know as a UPSC aspirant, that what is the state of manufacturing, what is the state of industry in India. So as per economic survey, we are again having steady recovery. This manufacturing sector has been affected by the pandemic. It has been also affected by the global supply chain disruption. It has also been affected by the some policy, like Aishwarya has rightly said that the India's manufacturing sector. अब इंडिया में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग जो होता है वो दो categories में है. One is heavy industries, like large industries, and there are some micro, small and medium enterprises. So majority of the manufacturing in India, it happens through the micro, small and medium enterprises, and as well as we can see that the micro, small and medium enterprises, that is MSME sector, is the sector which provides the employment to majority of the population in India. So ये जो manufacturing sector के जो problems है, what are the problems and what are the challenges in front of the manufacturing sector in India, that you can come to know by reading this chapter, the chapter. And you will also come to know that how the problems created due to the pandemic, how the roadblocks created due to the Russia-Ukraine war, and how to the problems created due to the faulty implementation of some of the government policies. इंडिया का जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर का जो ग्रोथ था वो जो रुक गया था और इनफैक्ट वो नेगेटिव में चला गया था इन द लास्ट 2-3 years. So there is a steady recovery of the industry. That is what as per the economic survey. So by reading this chapter, you will come to know that what is the state of the manufacturing sector in India, what are the problems of the manufacturing sector in India, and how the manufacturing sector is steadily recovering in India, that you can come to know. And as we all know, the services is the source of strength for India. As I told you earlier, India ka maximum contribution of the GDP in India is from the services sector. Services sector has been India's strength in the last 25 to 30 years after the economic liberalization. सर्विसेज सेक्टर में इंडिया में बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे ग्रोथ हो चुका है. तो दिस इज द सोर्स ऑफ द स्ट्रेंथ. तो हाउ द सर्विस सेक्टर इज परफॉर्मिंग, व्हाट इज द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ द सर्विस सेक्टर, दैट यू कैन कम टू नो बाय रीडिंग दिस चैप्टर. जैसे कि मैंने कहा है आपको कि सर्विस सेक्टर में ट्रेमेंडस ग्रोथ हुआ है, एंड ऑफ कोर्स इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि इंडस्ट्री में हमारा ग्रोथ कम हो चुका है और सर्विसेज में बहुत ज्यादा हो चुका है. वी शुड इग्नोर सर्विसेज एंड वी शुड फोकस मोर ऑन इंडस्ट्रीज ओनली. नो, services is been the strength of the economy. Services is providing us the foreign exchange reserve. Services is helping it to have a proper balance of payment. It is helping us to have the proper, you can say, import, because जब तक services हम export नहीं करेंगे तब तक हमें क्या नहीं मिलेगा? We will not get the money to import the goods from current account, right? So services is source of strength, and how services in India the source of the strength, that's what you can come to know by reading this article. Next is external sector. External sector मतलब क्या? How the Indian economy is affected by the external factors like Russia Ukraine war and European Union में जो problem हुआ है, and as well as the policies of the Federal Reserve of America, the policies of the developed nation as well as the policies of the underdeveloped nation and developing nation, उनके पॉलिसी से इंडिया के इकोनॉमी पे किस तरीके से इम्पैक्ट होता है, that is what is explained in this chapter. That is called external sector. And last is physical and digital infrastructure lifting potential growth. So as we all know कि इंडिया का जो potential growth है उसको बढ़ाने के लिए government is trying to create our infrastructure. So both two types of infrastructure. One is physical infrastructure. Physical infrastructure will of course include roads, railways, ports, airports, and physical infrastructure उसमें growth किया जा रहा है. Digital infrastructure. Digital infrastructure means digitalization के लिए जो digital infrastructure की जरूरत है, जैसे कि digital infrastructure में आएगा our satellites. Digital infrastructure will also include the internet lines, then creating digital infrastructure in rural areas and creating digital economies. With the help of that we can increase our growth. That is explained here. So how physical and digital infrastructure is lifting the potential growth. मतलब अगर इंडिया का जो growth है, potential मतलब many economists in the world believe that, and as well as in India believe that कि India has the potential to grow in double digits. Double digits मतलब India has the potential to grow 11%, 12%, 13% per annum. But अभी फिलहाल इंडिया का जो economic growth है, that is only it is around 6% now. तो अगर हमें डबल डिजिट इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ रेट अगर हमें जाना है लॉन्ग टर्म में, अगर हमें हमारा इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ अगर बढ़ाना है, then we need to improve our physical infrastructure and we need to improve our digital infrastructure. Now coming to the conflicting model of economic development. अगर हम देखेंगे, as I always say, कि there are two conflicting models of economic development in India. One is called top model and bottom to top model. So Congress and other political parties in India, they believe that the economic development should happen from bottom to top. मतलब नीचे से ऊपर की तरफ डेवलपमेंट होना चाहिए. They believe that people should be given proper education. They should be given, those people who are not able to get the education, they should be given free education. They should be provided free healthcare facilities. They should be given subsidies, like those small farmers. Those farmers who are not able to adapt the technologies, those farmers who are not able to buy the you can say seeds, those farmers who are not able to buy the technologies, they are not able to buy the machineries which is required for the agricultural development. उन्हें subsidy देना चाहिए, education subsidy देना चाहिए, then free electricity देना चाहिए, then free education देना चाहिए, free health facility देना चाहिए. ये जब government provide करेगा, automatically people will become skilled. People will become हमारा एक social infrastructure create हो जाएगा, और that will lead to the economic growth. That is what is the model, and this model is called as Amartya Sen model, जो कांग्रेस और अदर पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज उसमें बिलीव करती है. The other model is called जगदीश भगवती मॉडल, जिसमें ये बिलीव किया जाता है कि हमें रोड बनाना है, rather than spending money on giving subsidies to the farmers, giving education, free education to the people, giving health facilities to the people, government को क्या करना चाहिए? Government should focus more on creating physical infrastructure. Like the government should try to create a road, government should try to create faster transport system, government should try to have the physical infrastructure. और physical infrastructure जब बनाएंगे, जब government road बनाएगा, government जब port बनाएगा, government जब ट्रेन बनाएंगे, बुलेट ट्रेन बनाएंगे, या गवर्नमेंट जिस तरीके से लार्ज इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाएगा, तो उससे क्या हो जाएगा? द मनी विल बी एक्सपेंडेड. The money which will be spent by the government, that will ultimately go to the engineers, that money will go to the service sector people, that money will go to the businessman. businessman will give this money to the employees, and ultimately the money will go into the economy, or people will try to buy the goods, they will try to buy the services, और उसकी तरह उस हिसाब से इंडिया का इकोनॉमी ग्रो हो जाएगा. So the current government जो है, मतलब पिछले, as we all know that after the changing the government, the economic policy has changed. So the current government follows the policy of top to bottom approach, where government, rather than giving free subsidies, like one word is popularized by our prime minister, it is called revenue. Rather than giving free money to the people, rather than giving revenue to the people, government को कहाँ खर्च करना चाहिए? फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर और डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे गवर्नमेंट को खर्च करना चाहिए. दैट इज व्हाट द गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी इज. तो लास्ट चैप्टर ऑफ दिस इकोनॉमिक सर्वे helps you to understand this particular policy of the government in physical and digital infrastructure. Clear? All understood? So these are the chapter which you need to study in economics survey. का जो चैप्टर है उसमें पढ़ना क्या है, आपको what you are supposed to study and how you are supposed to study. That's what I will let you know. Can you all see the economic survey PDF on your screen? Okay, अब इसको पढ़ना कैसे है? Remember how to read it out. Those who are going to appear this year's prelims exam, I think only they should read it out. Those who are planning to exam maybe in 2024 or maybe in 2025, जो अगले साल या next year, those who are planning to do the exam, I don't think they need to study the economic survey thoroughly and seriously now, because of course if you are giving exam next year or if you are giving exam next year, you have to read the economic survey of next year in seriously आपको पढ़ना है. But by reading the economic survey this year, you will get to understand the broader, the problems of the Indian economy and broader the concept of the Indian economy. कि फिलहाल इंडिया के इकोनॉमी के challenges क्या है, how government is trying to do, what are the conflicts in the policies, what is the conflict of the government, that you can come by reading this year's economic survey. But seriously अगर आपको पढ़ना है and आपको अगर notes बनाना है, तो you have to make it next year. But आप लोगों में से those people who are appearing this year's prelims exam and this year's mains exam, you have to read it seriously and you have to make some notes. So how to make that notes I will explain to you. Of those who are going to appear this year's exam, I would suggest you to read one chapter one day. Like first day you can read the first chapter, second chapter, ये जो जितने भी सारे chapters like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So there are total 12 chapters here. So if you read each chapter one day, then we can finish this economic survey in 12 days. So every day you have to read one chapter and you have to make the notes. Like notes आप कैसे बनाएंगे? ऐसे ही बनाएंगे जैसे यहाँ पे जो टॉपिक्स दिया ना, ऐसे आप notes बनाएंगे. First notes will be state of the Indian economy. So you will be making just one page notes, not more than one page, because ये जो state of the Indian economy अगर आप देखेंगे, you can see here that economic survey is having almost around 414 page. So you're not going to make the notes of all 414 pages. I just want you to make a notes of only 12 pages. Each chapter, each the topic पे एक पेज का आपको नोट्स बनाना है. So how to make that notes, that also will explain to you. So every day you have to read one chapter. We can see one chapter and you have to make notes of one chapter every day. The first is state of the economy. So let's see how you need to study the state of the economy and how to make the notes. Can you all see the PDF on your screen? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Preface मतलब क्या होता है? Preface means introduction. Like before you read the economic survey, अगर आपको एक बैकग्राउंड चाहिए कि हमें इकोनॉमिक सर्वे को पढ़ना है, तो that is what is explained here. But reading newspaper regularly, those who have finished the basics of Indian economy or government budgeting, then उनके लिए ये preface पढ़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. You don't need to read the preface. We can directly start with the first chapter. But अगर किसी जरूरत है, जैसे कि यहाँ पर कुछ पैराग्राफ एक्सप्लेन किए हैं, जैसे कि दिस पैराग्राफ, India had a good monsoon and reservoir levels higher than the last year and the 10-year average. Do you remember? In the basics of geography class हमने देखा था कि sometimes India is having above normal monsoon and below normal monsoon. So last year India में the monsoon was a good monsoon and the reservoir levels are higher than the last year and then the 10-year average. मतलब हर 10 साल में एक बार ऐसा एक फेनोमेना होता है कि जिसकी वजह से इंडिया में बारिश ज्यादा होती है. Like La Nina was responsible for the more rainfall in India. So the fundamentals of the Indian economy are as sound as it enters into Amrit Kal. There is a 25-year journey towards the centenary as a modern independent nation. Policies pursued carefully and consciously have ensured that recovery is robust and sustainable. This is the context of which the economic survey undertakes an assessment of the economy in percent. So now we need to keep in mind before reading the economic survey that as per government we are entering into Amrit Kal और ये आने वाले 25 साल में we are striving to become an independent nation. We are trying to become a modern nation. That is what is mentioned here. So that the upcoming 25 years journey towards its centenary as a modern and independent nation. Remember, आप लोगों को गर्व महसूस होना चाहिए कि हम ऐसे पीरियड में हम we are youth, we are young, we are going to contribute to make India a developed nation. We are going to contribute to make India a modern nation. So that is what is mentioned here. तो इसको ध्यान में रखते हुए हमको इकोनॉमिक सर्वे को पढ़ना है कि कैसे हम इंडिया के इकोनॉमी को डेवलप नेशन बना सकते हैं, कैसे इंडिया को हम इंडिपेंडेंट नेशन बना सकते हैं. इंडिपेंडेंट इन द सेंस इकोनॉमिकल इंडिपेंडेंट. How we can make India an economically independent country? Because we know in the last 75 years, India was dependent on many other countries on so many things. We were dependent on other countries for our defense technologies, our food grain. We were dependent on other countries for our oils. We were dependent on other countries for edible oil, fuel, technologies, etc. But upcoming 25 years, India wants to become an independent nation. तो कैसे ये इंडिपेंडेंट नेशन बन सकता है उसको ध्यान में रखते हुए पॉलिसीज गवर्नमेंट क्या बना रहा है, दैट्स व्हाट वी नीड टू बी. Policies pursued carefully and consciously have ensured that the recovery is robust and sustainable. This is the context in survey undertakes an assessment of the economy. So what economic survey does? Economic survey actually assess the macroeconomic indicators of the economy. That is, what is the economic growth rate, what is the inflation rate, what is employment rate, what is India's export, what how government issues. That's what you can come to know by reading this article. In the light of the recent and past, examines the prospects in the coming years. Before I give you an overview of what awaits inside the pages of the economic survey, it is worth reiterating that the year is still ongoing. The survey is based on the 9 months of the data at best at 8 mostly. Of course, this economic survey is given by the economic advisor of the country. The economic survey का ये जो data है, ये last 9 months का. 9 months मतलब 3 quarters. In a year we have 4 quarters. So this economic survey is the data of the 3 quarters only. Last मतलब November, December जो है, like October, November, December. This month's data is not been given here. Only the data of the last 3 quarters has been given here. That is what is explained. Now let's go on to the first chapter. अभी आपको कल first chapter को आपको पढ़ना है. First chapter that is you have to make the notes of the state of Indian economy. So what is the state of the Indian economy? That's what you can come to know by first chapter. तो state of the Indian economy क्या देखना है, notes कैसे बनाना है, that's what I'll explain to you here. Yes. Are we going to read each and everything of the state of the economy? No. We will be not reading each and everything of the state of the economy. We will be just reading the introduction. ये पहला जो introduction है, this first. यहाँ से लेकर आप यहाँ तक ही पढ़ेंगे. This is, you will read it in detail. यहाँ पर आपको सारा सब कुछ पता चल रहा है. You will come to know what is the state of the economy. All the macroeconomic indicators you will come to know by reading this introduction. Then one by one you can see notes जब आप बनाएंगे तो सबसे पहले लिखेंगे कि what are the global economy, how the global economy is facing the challenges. अब देखेंगे कि it's not like that the only Indian economy is facing the challenges, the problems in front of the economy. All the economies in the world is facing the challenge. That is what our finance minister has also said. So what are those global challenges? That's what they can come to know. First challenge है the COVID pandemic. This is one of the important challenge. That is what is mentioned here, that in the last century several events can be recollected. This is one. COVID-19 is one of the important challenge. Then Russia Ukraine conflict. अब आप जब नोट्स बनाओगे ना तो ऐसे ही बनाओगे. Challenges in the global economy. सबसे पहला है COVID-19, ये आप पॉइंट्स ऐड करेंगे. सेकंड पॉइंट विल बी रशिया यूक्रेन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. और रशिया यूक्रेन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की वजह से ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी रिकवरी क्यों स्लो हो रहा है, दैट इज आल्सो एक्सप्लेन्ड हियर. सो ये जो डेटा है, यू कैन सी दिस डेटा, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर अस. you will be just going through this ये जो ग्राफ दिया हुआ है आपको बस को देखना है. अब इससे आपको क्या पता चल जाएगा. Here there are various lines here. इसमें आप देखेंगे increase in the food price, increase in all commodity and increase in coal prices, then as well as crude oil prices. So this paragraph helps you in understanding what are the levels of the increase in the prices at global level. मतलब international level पे कौन सी कमोडिटी इंक्रीज हो रही थी और कौन सी कमोडिटी के प्राइसेस डिक्रीज हो रहे थे, आपको यहाँ पता चल जाएगा. इससे यू कैन यू सी द फर्टिलाइजर लाइन, द ग्रीन लाइन. सबसे ज्यादा अगर किसी कमोडिटी का प्राइसेस अगर बढ़ गया इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे, दैट इज द फर्टिलाइजर. देन यू कैन सी द क्रूड ऑयल प्राइसेस एंड हियर यू कैन सी अगर इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे अगर किसी चीज ज्यादा अगर फ्लक्चुएट नहीं हुए तो दैट्स यू कैन सी द फूड प्राइसेस. कैन यू सी योर फूड प्राइसेस. तो दिस पैराग्राफ अभी आपको क्या करना है, बस ट्रेंड देखना है. यू जस्ट नीड टू सी द ट्रेंड, which commodity prices is increasing and which commodity prices are decreasing at international level. Now नीचे जो दिया हुआ है, this is the inflation in advanced countries and inflation in India, because of course हमने देखा था कि one of the important argument of the finance minister in the parliament was that कि yes इंडिया में भी इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ रहा है, लेकिन दूसरे कंट्रीज में भी, एडवांस्ड कंट्रीज में भी इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ रहा है. कंपेयर टू एडवांस्ड कंट्रीज इंडिया का जो इन्फ्लेशन रेट है वो कम है. दैट इज व्हाट वाज द आर्गुमेंट ऑफ द फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर इन द पार्लियामेंट. सो दैट्स व्हाट इज डेटा हियर गिवन कि एडवांस्ड कंट्रीज में इन्फ्लेशन रेट कितना है. व्हाट वाज द इन्फ्लेशन इन द एडवांस्ड कंट्रीज लाइक फ्रांस, जर्मनी, यूके, यूएस एंड जापान. दैट इज व्हाट इज एक्सप्लेन्ड हियर. देन व्हाट वाज द इन्फ्लेशन रेट इन emerging economies like India. India जो emerging economy है, India के जैसे ही there are some other emerging economies also like Brazil, China, Mexico, Russia. So what was the state of the inflation in emerging economies? So that is also explained here. तो ये आपको just trend देखना है. तो now tell me here, India का जो है, India का inflation यहाँ पर. Can you see this line? This is India. तो हम देखेंगे India का जो inflation उतना ज्यादा change नहीं हुआ है last year, but the economy like रशिया में इन्फ्लेशन बहुत बड़े पैमाने पर बढ़ गया. ऑफ कोर्स बिकॉज ऑफ द रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर द इन्फ्लेशन वाज मोर इन रशिया. बट अदर इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमी अगर हम देखेंगे उसमें सबसे ज्यादा अगर इन्फ्लेशन है, वन इज इन ब्राजील, देन इट वाज इन रशिया, देन उसके बाद चाइना एंड इंडिया इज ऑलमोस्ट हैविंग, मेक्सिको एंड इंडिया इज ऑलमोस्ट हैविंग द सेम अमाउंट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन. तो दिस पैराग्राफ हेल्प्स यू इन अंडरस्टैंडिंग द कंपैरिजन ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन विद advanced economies, that is developed economies, and it will also help you to understand the inflation in the emerging market economies. तो ये चीज आपको ध्यान में रखना है. These paragraphs are very important. Bond yields के government bond yields, whether the bond yields are increasing or whether the bond yields are decreasing, that is what is explained here. तो इंडिया के जो बॉन्ड यील्ड्स हैं उसमें ज्यादा बदलाव नहीं हुआ. दैट्स व्हाट यू कैन सी. ऑल ऑफ यू नो व्हाट आर बॉन्ड यील्ड्स. सपोज इफ द बॉन्ड यील्ड्स आर मोर, इसका मतलब क्या है कि गवर्नमेंट रिटर्न अच्छा दे रहा है या नहीं दे रहा है. ठीक है, आई विल बी डिस्कसिंग द बॉन्ड यील्ड्स लेटर ऑन, बट यहाँ पर आपको बॉन्ड यील्ड्स का भी पता चल जाएगा. देन वी डायरेक्टली गो टू द मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक एंड ग्रोथ चैलेंज. The next important is India के what are the challenges in front of the Indian economy for growth. क्यों इंडिया का इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ रेट कम हो चुका है, that is what is explained. तो रियल जीडीपी is explained here, real GDP as well as the current prices GDP, that is called nominal GDP. तो real GDP अगर हम देखेंगे as per the government in financial year 2023 real GDP has increased. That is what is explained here. अब यहाँ अगर हम देखेंगे ये जो येलो लाइन है, this yellow line is a growth rate and this bar graphs are the real GDP. And ये जो line है, this line dotted line is actually the nominal GDP. ये nominal GDP है और ये real GDP है. Can you see the real GDP is fluctuating? कभी real GDP बढ़ रहा है और कभी real GDP कम हो रहा है. ऐसे क्यों हो रहा है? Idea? We can see in financial year 2021 real GDP is reduced. But when you know the अब अगर financial year 22 में या अगर 23 का अगर हम देखेंगे तो यहाँ पर real GDP ज्यादा दिखाई दे रहा है. Anyone knows why this real GDP is more in 22 and 23 and why the real GDP is very less here? Sagar, Shubhdeep. Kavya, you have any idea that why? Like you can see, ये real GDP की line है. The real GDP keeps falling here. ये हम देखेंगे ये यहाँ तक financial year 2021 तक real GDP यहाँ पर कम दिखाई दे रहा है. But suddenly the real GDP rise from 21 to 22.
So my guess is it should be the COVID chaos.
Sorry?
Is it due to the COVID chaos?
No, it is actually related to the calculation of GDP, the methods of calculation of GDP. Because you know, in financial year 2022, we have changed the base year. Because till here, the GDP जो calculate किया गया था, जहां तक जो real GDP जो calculate किया था, since financial year 2021, the GDP was calculated. The real GDP was calculated for the base year of 2014 and 15. But now recently, in financial year 2022, the real GDP is calculated at the changed base year prices. Right, Sagar? Base year का जो price है, base year
2017.
Yes, Sagar.
Base year was 2017, sir.
Just this change in the real GDP or sudden growth in the real GDP is because of the change in the base year count. Earlier, what happened? Till here, because you know the real GDP is calculated at the base year prices, and this is the GDP calculated at the current year prices. So there is huge difference between the real GDP and nominal GDP because the base year जो था, yeah, the calculation was done at the base year prices. But suddenly when the base year changes, of course, the like 2013-14 के base year के prices अगर आप calculation करेंगे तो real GDP कम ही होगा. When you change the base year, like from 2014-15 to when you change the base year from 2017-18, since the prices increased, the real GDP is also increased. So this is what is called a base effect. Got it, Kavya? This increase in the real GDP is not because of the actual increase in the production. That is because of the increase, change in the base year, and change in the base year की वजह से जो real GDP के calculation में जो बदलाव होता है, increase होता है, that is what is called as base effect. All of you remember base effect, Saima? When I was discussing the inflation, I was discussing the economic growth rate. उस समय मैंने आपको explain किया था कि base year change होने के बाद जो GDP में जो growth दिखाई देता है real GDP में, that is what is called as base. Clear? That is what is called base effect. Solve. तो यहाँ पर क्या ध्यान में रखना है कि financial year 2020 तक जब when the GDP was being calculated, Kavya, that was calculated at the prices of earlier base year. I don't exactly know now. Remember कि कौन सा year was considered as a base year. उसमें बदलाव हुआ है, I know it, but whether it is 2014-15 or whether it is 2017-18, I don't know. But when you read it, you will come to know. There is sudden increase in the GDP year. That is because of the change in the base year. So this is what is called a base effect. Clear?
Got it.
Okay. So here you can see the real GDP is fluctuating. The nominal GDP is steady, and growth rate is also growth rate you can come to know from this thing. So just check it out. Now let's go to the next page. Real gross value components, real versus gross value addition in the economy. Share of the real GDP components. Real GDP में कितना बड़ा बढ़ोतरी हुआ, that is what is explained here. CPI inflation. Inflation graph is also given. What was the inflation in the last year? That is given in this graph. Rupee appreciation, rupee depreciation. Whether the India's rupee value increase or decrease, and compared to other economies is also been given here. Current account deficit, whether increased or decreased in the last year, that is also given here. Foreign exchange reserve increase or decrease, that is also given here. So these are the macroeconomic indicators. Share of export in GDP increased or decreased, that is what it says here. Share of export in GDP expand. Now these graphs and these charts are important for us. We just need to go through these charts and graphs. We don't need to read each and everything. Introduction, then we will just go through this. The total capital and expenditure increased. Like in financial year, as per the government, capital expenditure government का बढ़ गया है. तो capital expenditure अगर बढ़ गया तो कौन से sector में government ने ज़्यादा capital expenditure किया? That's what you can see here. Now, how the question can be framed in this particular thing? Like, consider the following statements. Sorry, consider the following statement with respect to capital expenditure in India. Now, just see this graph and try to find out the answer. How the question can be framed? Like, question will be like, consider the following statements regarding the capital expenditure in India recently. So, the percentage of the capital expenditure by the union government has increased tremendously. Second statement, the percentage of the capital expenditure by the state has increased tremendously in last decade. You got the question? Here you can see there are two graphs. One is, or otherwise they might also see that the percentage or the contribution in the capital expenditure is more by the state compared to union government. Now tell me, अगर आप ग्राफ देखेंगे तो इससे आपको क्या पता चल जाता है? The state government spends more on capital expenditure or the union government or central government spends more on the capital expenditure? Can you see this? This is the state capital expenditure and this is central capital expenditure. Now, by looking at this graph, we will come to know how much amount has been spent by the state government in the capital expenditure and union government in capital expenditure. And one controversy has also been arise in few years. Union government want that the state government should spend more on capital expenditure than revenue expenditure. मतलब state government एजुकेशन, हेल्थ, इन चीजों पे ज्यादा खर्च नहीं करना चाहिए. स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे ज्यादा खर्च करना चाहिए. दैट इज व्हाट द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट वाज आस्किंग टू द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट, एंड दैट इज व्हाई प्राइम मिनिस्टर सेड दैट some of the state governments are giving free ki revadia to the people. So why you need to see here, because that this controversy was in the news. So I am expecting that UPSC might ask a question in this exam related to that how much capital expenditure is done by the union government and how much capital expenditure is done by the state government. Understood how the question can be framed on this graph?
Yes, sir.
Now next is capital expenditure doubled in the past 5 years. The question can be like, consider the following statement regarding capital expenditure. So the capital expenditure increased in the last 5 years. So the statement is correct or wrong? ऐसे पूछा जाएगा. The statement would be also like, in the past year capital expenditure of India has decreased. So the statement will be correct or wrong? Aishwarya, suppose if the statement says that in the last few years or in the last 5 years the capital expenditure by the union government has decreased, the statement will be correct or it will be wrong? You got my question, Aishwarya? Okay, कोई और है? मेरी आवाज, I think Aishwarya's voice is not audible to me. Just Kavya, what do you think? Suppose if the statement says that in exam that capital expenditure in the last 5 years has decreased, so the statement will be correct or it will be wrong?
It's false.
It will be wrong, right? So जब आप ये पढ़ रहे हो, ये इकोनॉमिक सर्वे का फर्स्ट चैप्टर जब पढ़ रहे हो, तो आपको ये देखना है, you just need to check the trend of what, whether the inflation is increasing or whether it is decreasing. Within inflation, again, CPI is increasing or WPI is increasing, or CPI is decreasing or WPI is increasing. Then capital expenditure is increasing or decreasing, and when we are again seeing the capital expenditure, union government capital expenditure is increasing or state government capital expenditure is decreasing. That's what you need to show. In investment, again, you can see private investment and government investment. So private investment is also, you can see here, private investment is also increasing. In the last 5 years, the private investment, 21-22 में private investment कम हो गया था, but last year में private investment is also slowly increasing. Now beyond tax collection मतलब क्या, tax collection बढ़ गया. अब उसमें भी देखेंगे direct tax collection and GST. Can you see here? The direct taxes increase more or indirect taxes increase more? Do you remember? ये क्वेश्चन मैंने आपको पूछा था few times back. Like India's tax collection increased, but in that, whether the direct taxes increase or indirect taxes increase?
Indirect tax.
Indirect.
Here you can see GST collection बढ़ गया है, right? The GST collection has increased in the last financial year. Direct tax collection भी बढ़ गया है, लेकिन direct tax से ज़्यादा indirect tax बढ़ गया. That's what you can see. So tax collection में क्या trend है? That's what you can see here. Second is, what is the revenue expenditure? So limited growth in revenue expenditure. See, you can see revenue expenditure में बहुत ज़्यादा expenditure नहीं हुआ. Revenue expenditure मतलब expenditure on salaries, expenditure on subsidies, etc. So the revenue expenditure limited growth. There is growth, but there is a limited growth. ठीक है? Capital expenditure increased while the revenue expenditure limitedly increased. अब of course it is a, you can say, play of word. गवर्नमेंट शब्दों के साथ खेल रहा है. इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में वो कह रहा है कि ग्रोथ है बट वो लिमिटेड है. नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट ग्राफ. डबल डिजिट ग्रोथ इन बैंक क्रेडिट. बैंक क्रेडिट टू एमएसएमई पिछले कुछ सालों से बढ़ गया है. ऐश्वर्या ने कहा था जो एमएसएमई इज द मोस्ट इंपोर्टेंट फैक्टर, तो दैट इज व्हाट इज एक्सप्लेन्ड हियर कि एमएसएमई माइक्रो स्मॉल मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस को क्रेडिट बढ़ा है या घटा है. दैट इज व्हाट इज एक्सप्लेन्ड हियर. सो इट इज इंडियन से there is a double digit growth in bank credit to micro small medium enterprises. Then corporate bond yield बढ़ता जा रहा है. Only 1 minute is left. Shall we continue or shall we do it tomorrow? It's almost 10:30 now.
So we can continue.
Okay, I'll finish this chapter, then we will stop. So 1 minute is left. Once the session is ended, all of you please join back again if the session is ended. Okay, here it is about the inflation, whether the inflation is increased or whether the inflation is decreased. That's what you can get the trend here. But ये जो first chapter जो है, the first chapter is about the state of the economy last year. This is not the state of the economy for the last 5 years or last 10 years. ये लास्ट ईयर का स्टेट ऑफ द इकोनॉमी बताता है. अगले जो चैप्टर्स है, द नेक्स्ट चैप्टर, दैट एक्चुअली हेल्प्स यू इन हैविंग द अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ द लास्ट डिकेड्स, यू नो द स्टेट ऑफ द इकोनॉमी. नाउ जीएस पेपर 3 अगेन टॉपिक इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. Growth is inclusive when it creates jobs. So whether the last year jobs have been created or not, that is what is explained here. Urban employment rate and rural employment rate, both has been explained here. This graph helps you in understanding the employment rate in India, improvement in the rural welfare indicators, whether the height and weight of the children, the National Family Health Survey